Welcome to Notepad. This is, of course, a show that talks about businesses all the time, every time. But since it's a Raya moment, I want to introduce some elements of the Raya programming. Over the next few days, we're going to be doing a little bit of lifestyle, we're going to be doing a little bit of feature coverage. But today, we shall talk about some businesses that are going through some turbulent times in terms of COVID, and of course, what it means for them to come out from this particular calamity, in a way, of the economic situation in the country. So joining me for this evening is Supahands, Mark Koh. He is, of course, the boss over there. Mark, thanks again for taking the time to speak with us.
No problems, Ibrahim. Thanks so much for having me.
Hey, let's talk a little bit about the company itself. What is Supahands? What do you guys do?
Yeah, sure. So Supahands is, we're a Malaysian business. We were formed in 2014. And what we do as an organization is we actually label training data. We prepare training data for machine learning and artificial intelligence. So that sounds like a lot. But what it actually means, people have this misconception that AI is built of just code. But what actually happens is a lot of human insights needs to be inserted into these models, into these machines, to make them more human, right? So what we do is we have a large distributed workforce across Southeast Asia of about 13,000 super agents, people. They work from home, and they work on our platform and our technology stack to label data for different companies across the world. So a lot of our clients are based internationally, primarily in the US, in Singapore, while we are home here in Malaysia with about 50 core employees.
So that doesn't take much in terms of the staff strength. Does it mean that everything is automated over at your end?
To a certain extent, we can automate as much as we can, and that's something that we keep doing. So we're automating a lot because we need to create a lot more efficiency in the business itself. But it's still very much, you still need a lot of hands to do the work. You still need a lot of people to build models, to automate things, to label data.
Okay, let's talk about your company right now that is undergoing through COVID-19 and MCO. I mean, it is after Raya, and the situation now is a little bit better as opposed to late March or sometime in April. Talk through your business, how you guys come out from that MCO period and how you guys are doing now.
So with Supahands itself, we've always been a distributed business or a remote business from the get-go. We've always built our infrastructure remote. So we're digital from the get-go, and that's always been very helpful. So moving into the whole MCO, we haven't really seen a massive change in terms of the way we've been working. In fact, we've actually seen increased productivity, increased cadence of the team itself. And I think that's something that a lot of companies who are going digital would actually say that the issue is perhaps burnout of a lot of our staff, because it's difficult to break your weekday, your weekend, your day, your night, because essentially you're working from home. So I think that's particularly one of the dangers of it. But for us as an organization, coming out of the MCO, like I mentioned before, there wasn't too much change, but the effect on us would be on the client side. So I think being very mindful of how our clients are doing, because they're the ones who are, I guess, generating revenue for us. They're the ones paying us. So being very aware of how clients, the pulse of the economy has been very important for me.
So some businesses do better, some of them fare better than others, some of them fare worse than others. What do you think is important for businesses to think about in order for them to prevail over this period of time?
Yeah, so some companies, it depends on industry to industry. I think, as you know, like the airline industry is not doing great. Like tourism, hospitality has always been badly hit. However, other organizations will be thriving, like the delivery services. They will be doing really, really well at this current moment, this current time. But I think by not looking at industry, I think it comes down to it comes down to mindset of an organization, right? So as a business, we need to adapt, and a term that we use in the office a lot is adapt or die. And that seems to be a big thing here, that where we need to move the business very quickly, maintain that agility in the organization to be able to meet new demands. So if it means opening up a new revenue stream, that's something we might have to do, or our companies will have to do. But I think during this period, it means like being a leader. I think it's a very trying time, because you now need to look after your people. You need to make sure that the team has very solid physical and mental mindset. You need to make sure they are they're healthy from a mental perspective, also on top of physical, right? So being a leader, it means communicating to them how the business is going, communicating to them very clearly, the ups and downs, and what I'm going through, as a CEO, and what I'm seeing in the market. And having that foresight, not just within myself, but also to share that with the team, I think is crucial at this time, to give them that comfort, to make sure they're not having that, the anxiety, and that anxiety can be very dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, because companies that communicate well and consistently and stable communication in terms of the way you use your body language, sentence structure, and all that, everything, right? From press releases all the way to broadcasts like we are doing now. That has to be key. And do you think that companies that communicate well and consistently do a little bit better in terms of allaying that kind of anxiety amongst their employees and their stakeholders?
Definitely, right? Because what you said, during MCO and how people work remotely, if you communicate well during this period, and then when you come out of this, are you still going to be as consistent? And if you didn't do a good job as a leader during the lockdown or when you're remote, coming out of it, do you still have the trust of your team? I think that's, how do you make sure that the team is ready to bounce on the opportunity that's at hand after, when there is a rebound in the market, when the market picks up again, when the economy starts to move a lot quicker? How do you make sure the team's aligned with you? And the only way to do that, in my opinion, is to bring them on that journey with you throughout the ups and downs of the business and what goes through your mind to a certain extent.
Mark, I want to talk a little bit about the festive period that we're going through right now and the expectations that is currently being held by the public right now. While we have kind of like gotten the situation under control, the messaging coming in from the Ministry of Health, from all the other governmental leaders, they're still expressing huge concern, making sure that people are not letting their guard down and all this other stuff. What about businesses? Do you think that they should approach a very cavalier way of doing things, or they should approach that kind of very safe, stable, small steps first? What should be the way you think is good for them to restart the economy again?
In my opinion, and what we're doing at Supahands itself, we're being very cautious about the whole situation. And the most important thing for me is making sure our team are good, in a good place. That means when we move back into the office, how do we make sure we're taking the necessary precautions? And not just what the Ministry of Health tells us to do, but I think what other things can we do to make sure that people feel that they're safe? And the last thing we want is to create an environment where if someone falls ill, it's going to affect the whole team. So I think everyone just needs to be a bit more cautious in terms of how we're doing it. And unfortunately, that comes with sacrifices as well. And during this whole festive season, it's tough, right? Because it's during this time that we want to spend time with people. We want to spend time with family. And I know it's difficult for a lot of the guys in our team, because having that empathy is very, very important at this current stage. From a business perspective, we're hoping to see, more business happen during this period. And I know it's only a matter of time before we start seeing that again. So the big part is, how do we make sure that we're able to sustain through this moment of volatility? How do we make sure we're able to thrive or survive during this period of ups and downs? So I think it's also important to make sure that there's sufficient cash reserves, to make sure that expenses are being managed really well. And revenue sometimes is beyond your control. You can only try as much, right? but it depends if someone's willing to pay. So the only thing within your control at this current stage are your expenses. So I think being very mindful of how you spend. And I don't think it's just a business thing, it's a personal thing as well. Each individual needs to make sure they have cash reserves. What happens if people are laid off? And you hear so many stories of that happening. So I think being mindful of that, teaching people how to conserve, save.
Yeah, and that's key. Of course, you're right. It's not just about managing a business; it's also managing our personal lifestyle as well. Again, thanks, Mark. I wish you all the best. Selamat Hari Raya, Maaf Zahir Batin. And thank you for the time to speak with us during this festive period. That was Mark Koh, the co-founder and CEO of Supahands. If you missed any part of this interview, just head on to astro.com. Look for such interviews over there. Until next time, thanks very much for watching, and goodbye.